One of the things I say around here all the time is prediction is the threshold of science. Prediction is the threshold of science. I don't say particularly nice things about science, but the scientific method, as practiced until around 1940 in the United States, was a enormously valuable epistemological tool. Since we've changed from the experimentation model to the peer review model, science has become yet another branch of politics, which is why I deride it all the time. But the statement, prediction is the threshold of science, is a way of understanding using the scientific method to understand what's going on in the world. And so, poor Kathleen, my lovely wife Kathleen, gets to suffer through me watching movies with her on Netflix and predicting the story beats one after another. And I'm able to do this for two reasons. Number one, on the basis of all the story logic that we've gone through here over the past months and years, the arguments of Benedy and Malady that I've been making over and over again. I know exactly how stories must proceed, given the nature of story and given experience, lifelong experience with thousands upon thousands of stories. But the other way I'm able to predict what's going to happen in stories is by using the DISC methodology that we've been talking about here since the summer of 2014. I think I'm astounded that the work that I've done with empathy strategy since July and August of 2014 has not made a bigger dent in the universe so far. To the extent that people have attended to me about this stuff at all, I think first they think I'm making a determinist argument, which clearly I am not. I do not believe in determinism in any form. All propulsive human behavior is caused by the free will, the free moral agency of the actor. What we're doing with empathy strategies isn't a determinist argument. It's about habit. It's an argument about habits of mind that you develop over the course of a lifetime without realizing that you're doing it, and the choices that you make according to those habits of mind without realizing that you are behaving in extremely predictable ways. It's not about denouncing or delimiting free will. It's about illustrating how free will works when you're behaving thoughtlessly. And I think the other huge complaint, unvoiced, none of these complaints are voiced, but the other huge complaint against the arguments I make about empathy strategies is that it's some kind of parlor game, which also is untrue. But using those empathy strategies in taking in cinema, taking in movies, especially movies on Netflix, I'm able to predict what's going to happen beat by beat, the story beats, the individual inflection points, if you want to call it that, in the stories, the change incidents in the story. I'm able to predict what's going to happen because if the writer behind the screenplay is being honest to his characters, they're going to behave, they're going to choose according to their disc profile. So all I have to do is disc the characters and I know what's going to happen in the story. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy the movie, and we saw two last night that I enjoyed particularly. Terrible titles, decent movies. I will write about them tomorrow, but the movies that I'm talking about are called People, Places, and Things is one of them, and the other is called This Is Not Funny. They're both kind of Gen X, Y, Z rom-coms. So they're very uncomfortable making, which is something that I kind of like in art anyway. They're about real people engaging in real life dilemmas, which I really like. But the screenwriters were completely true to their characters, and accordingly, their characters behaved in very predictable fashion. Prediction is the threshold of science. I had a particularly successful week for me in the sense that at least two people in the universe caught on to what I'm talking about by seeing it demonstrated in action. I had a really pathetic troll show up at selfadoration.com and took me on without having any idea who it was he was fighting or how well I was able to foresee how he would have to fight. again, based on his DISC profile, based on the empathy strategies that he's habituated over the course of his entire life, I knew exactly how he would behave. I was able to predict his behavior to 9 decimal places and defeat it, frustrate it at every turn. And this is nothing to me. It's really nothing, and it's kind of cruel, and it's sort of the sort of thing I try not to do. One of the many things that's meant by I am not arguing with you is that I don't want to use people in that way because I can, and because they don't even know what's going on, and because they're at a terrible disadvantage. Never play the other man's game. You should never play my game because I'm so much better at my game, you don't even know what game I'm playing. I'm many, many, many moves ahead of you before you even open your mouth because I know how you're going to choose. Not as a matter of necessity, but strictly as a matter of a long habituated thoughtless habit. So anyway, I put poor Kathleen through these 2 movies last night, predicting every beat in each one of these 2 movies, predicting exactly what was going to happen. And she's used to it, and she's almost as good as this at this as I am. You can't live around me without getting very, very good at disking everyone all the time because I'm going to make you do it. It's just what I do. It's what I do when I'm with people. When I was with David Brody in Tampa, I put him through it all weekend long, made him disc everybody that we met, everybody that we saw. I made him disc everyone. I don't know that he's taken full advantage of all of this, but I think the 2 people that I dealt with this week are in a good position to take better advantage of what we've been talking about going forward. And so last week we talked about Rancor management, and I produced a forgive me, winter has come and gotten me twice this year. Typically it only gets me once. I produced a chart illustrating how rancorous transactions will work out, rancorous interactions will work out. But the interesting thing about that chart is that it's also a very useful chart for a topic that we might call rancor avoidance. That given the DISC profile of the people that you're interacting with, once you've figured out their dominant characteristic, driven, incandescent, sociable, cautious, and ideally also their subdominant characteristic, the secondary characteristic on their DISC profile, again, DIS or C, once you know that someone is, for instance, a DI like I am, or an SC like one of my interlocutors this week is an SC, once you understand that DISC profile, you not only have a way of anticipating how rancorous interactions will play out, but you also have a way of avoiding rancor altogether. So if you're a manager, a boss, and you have a salesperson, you realize that you made a terrible hiring decision because this salesperson is cautious and driven, CD, will really follow through if he actually manages to snare a customer, but will only be appealing to other cautious personalities, especially only other CDs, will be a terrible salesperson with everyone else, and will never, no matter how much you invest in that person, no matter how much sales training you give to that person, no matter how many heart-to-heart chats you have with that person, you will never turn that person into a great salesperson. But what you can do with the CD is turn him into a really good bookkeeper, a really good member of your R&D team, perhaps. Truly excellent at those tasks. CS would be even better in the accounting department because a CS would be more trustworthy. A CD in the accounting department would get the work all done, but you might find out 6 months after he quits that there were 2 sets of books. In identifying that the people that you're involved with, you can anticipate potential future sources of rancor and engineer around them simply by deploying them differently or by providing them with things that will make them happy even when you keep them where they are. So for cautious personalities, giving them more systems to perfect, more information to absorb, more tools to learn about, more things to research, this will make your cautious people happier no matter what else you do with them. For your incandescent people, giving them more acclaim, giving them more trophies and more ribbons and more acknowledgement, public acknowledgement of the value that they bring to your social organization will make them happy no matter what else you do. For your sociable people, giving them more opportunities to create family like relationships among the people around you, more parties, more Secret Santa gift exchanges, more greeting cards. The person who's going to handle the greeting cards in your office will be a sociable. And if you've got a cautious person doing it, it will be done in the most hostile possible way. If you've got a driven person doing it, it will never be done. But if you want to make sure that that get well soon card gets to the hospital while the person is still in the hospital, you delegate that task to a sociable, and not only will the work get done, but the sociable person will be happier because they had that responsibility, because you gave them that responsibility. So in working that chart, if you take account of what it is that people idealize, what they like best in the world, and give them more of that, give the driven people more opportunities to finish things, give them more opportunities to achieve realization of the things that they idealize. If you give the incandescent people more acclaim, more acknowledgement, more appreciation, give them more public displays of how much you love them, they will be so much happier. If you give the sociables more opportunities to express their love for every living creature on the face of the earth, they will be happier. And if you give the cautious people more opportunities to idealize ultimate perfection, however that works out in your social group, they'll be happier at what they do. And in consequence, you will avoid rancor rather than having to figure out how to address it and diffuse it. You'll avoid it in the first place. I am going to keep this short today because I am still weak in the voice, but I wanted to mention as one last little bit, because we're running out of time to eliminate Donald Trump from the political landscape. The path for going after Donald Trump is through his father. And no one has done this, and no one has shown any insight into the relationship between Trump and his father. But the history of the man tells us that this is where his weakness is, that Trump was sent off to military school in the 7th or 8th grade. And Trump is from a middle-class family from Kew Gardens, New York, from Jamaica Estates in New York. If you come from money, or if you think of military school as being something that is associated with people with money, you're making a mistake. The Trump family had money by comparison to your family, but Donald Trump's father would have considered, Fred Trump was his name, Fred Trump would have considered himself middle class, and he would not have thought in terms of any sort of boarding school for his children. So the fact that Trump was sent to military school in the 7th or 8th grade tells us that Trump did something really amazingly, particularly awful when he was a teenager or a preteen. When he was achieving the age of sexual maturity, he did something really viciously awful. That his bullying character is obvious to this very day, but Donald Trump as a young man must have been an awful, awful bully in order to get sent away to military school. And that incident, getting sent to military school, and the subsequent attempt on Trump's part to win his way back into his good favor, his father's good favor, is Trump's Achilles heel. And if you're Ted Cruz or the National Review or any of the other forces aligned against Donald Trump in these primary elections, in this election season, you need to investigate that incident and then bring it out in the open. Whatever it was, bring it out in the open and then attack Trump relentlessly on his relationship with his father, because that is his weakness. All of this is obvious to me from his disc profile. The man is ID. He is diligent about sustaining his essentially false public image. And that false public image is the one that he created in order to try to win back the favor of his father. He never succeeded. I promise you, he never succeeded. And that's why he's still the way he is. And if you attack that weakness, you will have your best chance of getting the man to either cry or fly off the handle in public, which will rob him of all of the support of the people who think he's a strong man. He's not a strong man. He's a big, fat, needy pussy. And the only thing that keeps him going is the fact that no one, other than me apparently, knows which knitting needle to use to pop his balloon. But that's it. So if you want Trump, figure out the relationship with his father and attack him with it. In the meantime, if you want to understand people, and if you want to understand how better to manage your relationships with people, and if you want to understand how to avoid rancor, how to manage rancor when you find it, and ideally how to set up your social relationships in such a way that there not only never is any rancor, there's nothing but persistent, enduring delight, you need to study me on empathy strategies. My name is Greg Swan. This is the Church of Splendor. Splendor is what we're aimed at. Splendor is what we achieve. And I can show you how to do it by the numbers. So glad you could join me. Look forward to talking to you again next week.